"Sure," said George. "I seen plenty of tough little guys. But this Curly better not make no mistake about Lenny. Lenny ain't handy, but this Curly punk is gonna get hurt if he messes around with Lenny." "Well, Curly's pretty handy," the swamper said skeptically. "Never did seem right to me. Suppose Curly jumps a big guy and licks him. Everybody says what a game guy Curly is, and suppose he does the same thing and gets licked. Then everybody says the big guy ought to pick somebody his own size, and maybe they gang up on the big guy. Never did seem right to me. Seems like Curly ain't giving nobody a chance." George was watching the door. He said ominously, "Well, you better watch out for Lenny. Lenny ain't no fighter, but Lenny's strong and quick, and Lenny don't know no rules." He walked to the square table and sat down on one of the boxes. He gathered some of the cards together and shuffled them. The old man sat down on another box. "Don't tell Curly I said none of this. He'd slough me. He just don't give a damn. Won't ever get canned 'cause he's the old man's boss. 'Cause his old man's the boss, sorry." George cut the cards and began turning them over, looking at each one and throwing it down on a pile. He said, "This guy Curly sounds like a son of a bitch to me. I don't like mean little guys." "Seems to me like he's worse lately," said the swamper. "He got married a couple of weeks ago. His wife lives over in the boss's house. Seems like Curly is cockier than ever since he got married. He's showing off for his wife." The swamper warmed to his gossip. This old guy is like so stoked to have two people listening to him gossip about other guys. The swamper warmed to his gossip. "You seen that glove on his left hand?" "Yeah, I seen it." "Well, that glove's full of Vaseline." "Vaseline? What the hell for?" "Well, I tell you what. Curly says he's keeping that hand soft for his wife." Okay, I'm not going to explain this. The swamper is making a dirty joke. You can just do what you want with that. George studied the cards absorbedly. "That's a dirty thing to tell around," he said. The old man was reassured. He had drawn a derogatory statement from George. He felt safe now, and he spoke more confidently. "Wait till you see Curly's wife." George cut the cards again and put out a solitaire lay, slowly and deliberately. Solitaire, has anybody ever seen the game Solitaire? Only, obviously, one person can play it. That's why it's called Solitaire. And it's a method of organizing the cards in a certain way until you get stuck. George cut the cards again and put out a solitaire lay, slowly and deliberately. "Purty?" he asked casually. "Yeah, purty, but..." George studied his cards. "But what?" "Well, she got the eye." Okay, the eye is like slang. This guy is saying that she, like, is looking at all the guys. She got the eye, meaning even though she's married to Curly, she's like flirting and like potentially trying to get with other men. And this is all gossip, right? But the swamper is telling George, like, "Oh, she got the eye." "Yeah, married 2 weeks and got the eye? Maybe that's why Curly's pants is full of ants." "I seen her give Slim the eye. Slim's a jerkline skinner, hell of a nice fella. Slim don't need to wear no high-heeled boots on a game team." "I seen her give Slim the eye. Curly never seen it. And I seen her give Carlson the eye." George pretended a lack of interest. "Looks like we was gonna have some fun." The swamper looked up from his box. "You know what I think?" George did not answer. "I think Curly's married a tart." Now, this is the part where if we were all together in class, I would have made you go, because a tart is like the 1930s equivalent of saying the word slut or whore, right? So he basically just called this woman, what's the new term you guys taught me? I can't remember right now, but like loose. "He ain't the first," said George. "There's plenty that done that." The old man moved toward the door, and his ancient dog lifted his head and peered out, and then got painfully to his feet to follow. "I gotta be setting out the wash basins for the guys. The teams will be in before long. You guys gonna buck barley?" Yeah. You won't tell Curly nothing I said? Hell no. Well, you look her over, mister. You see if she ain't a tart. He stepped out at the door into the brilliant sunshine. George laid down his cards thoughtfully, turned his piles of 3. He built 4 clubs on his ace pile. The sun squares were on the floor now, and the flies whipped through it like sparks. The sound of jingling harness and the croak of heavy-laden axles sounded from outside. From the distance came a clear call. Stable Buck! Oh, Stable Buck! And then, where the hell is that goddamn N-word? Okay, so, sorry, I lost the light. People are throwing that word around like it's no big deal, right? Also, I should have given you a disclaimer, and I'll put it up on the distance learning matrix. Clearly, there's a lot of profanity in this book. I'm sure you can find edited versions online, so just keep that in mind. George stared at his solitaire lay, and then he flounced the cards together and turned around to Lenny. Lenny was lying down on the bunk watching him. Look, Lenny, this here ain't no setup. I'm scared. I'm gonna have trouble with that Curly guy. I seen that kind before. He was kind of feeling you out. He figures he's got you scared, and he's gonna take a sock at you the first chance he gets. Lenny's eyes were frightened. I don't want no trouble, he said plaintively. Don't let him sock me, George. George got up and went over to Lenny's bunk and sat down on it. I hate that kind of bastard, he said. I seen plenty of 'em. Like the old guy says, Curly don't take no chances. He always wins. He thought for a moment. If he tangles with you, Lenny, we're going to get the can, meaning they're going to get fired. Don't make no mistake about that. He's the boss's son. Look, Lenny, you try and keep away from him, will you? Don't never speak to him. If he comes in here, you move clear to the other side of the room. Will you do that, Lenny? I don't want no trouble, Lenny mourned. I never done nothing to him. Well, that won't do you no good if Curly wants to plug himself up for a fighter. Just don't have nothing to do with him. Will you remember? Sure, George, I ain't gonna say a word. The sound of the approaching grain teams was louder. Thud of big hooves on the hard ground. Drag of brakes and the jingle of trace chains. Men were calling back and forth from the teams. George, sitting in the bunk beside Lenny, frowned as he thought. Lenny asked him timidly, You ain't mad, George? I'm mad at you. I'm mad at this here Curly bastard. I hoped we was going to get a little steak together. Maybe $100? His tone grew decisive. You keep away from that Curly, Lenny. Sure I will, George. I won't say a word. Don't leave him pull you in. But if that son of a bitch socks you, let him have it. Basically, George just told Lenny, don't start a fight, but end it. If he starts one first, end it. Let him have what, George? Never mind. I'll tell you when. God, I hate that kind of guy. Look, Lenny, if you get into any kind of trouble, you remember what I told you to do? Do you guys remember what he told him to do? There's a place he wants him to go. Do you remember? Lenny raised up on his elbow, his face contorted with thought. Then his eyes moved sadly to George's face. If I get in any trouble, you ain't gonna let me tend the rabbits. That's not what I meant. You remember where we slept last night? Down by the river? Oh, yeah, I remember. Oh, sure, I remember. I go there. I hide in the brush. Hide till I come for you. Don't let nobody see you. Hide in the brush by the river. Say that over. Hide in the brush by the river. Down in the brush by the river. If you get in trouble. If I get in trouble. A brake screeched outside. A call came. Stable Buck! Oh, Stable Buck! George said. Say it over to yourself, Lenny, so that you won't forget it. Both men glanced up, for a rectangle of sunshine in the doorway was cut off. A girl was standing there looking in. Who is this? Who's it going to be? Take guesses. Curly's wife. Good job, you got it. She had full rouged lips, meaning dark red lipstick, and wide-spaced eyes heavily made up. Her fingernails were red. Her hair hung in little rolled clusters like sausages. She wore a cotton house dress and red mules. Mules are like high heels, on the insteps of which were little bouquets of red ostrich feathers. I'm looking for Curly, she said. Her voice had a nasal, brittle quality. George looked away from her and then back again, and George does one of these. He was in here a minute ago, but he went. Oh. She put her hands behind her back and leaned against the door frame so that her body was thrown forward. You're the new fellas that just come, ain't ya? Yeah? Lenny's eyes moved down over her body, and though she did not seem to be looking at Lenny, she bridled a little. She looked at her fingernails. Sometimes Curly's in here, she explained. George said brusquely, Well, he ain't now. If he ain't, I guess I better look someplace else, she said playfully. Lenny watched her, fascinated. George said, If I see him, I'll pass the word you was looking for him. She smiled archly and twitched her body. Nobody can't blame a person for looking, she said. There were footsteps behind her, going by. She turned her head. Hi, Slim, she said. Slim's voice came in through the door. Hi, good looking. I'm trying to find Curly, Slim. Well, you ain't trying very hard. I seen him going into your house. She was suddenly apprehensive. Bye, boys, she called into the bunkhouse, and she hurried away. George looked around at Lenny. Jesus, what a tramp, he said. So that's what Curly picks for a wife. She's purty, said Lenny defensively. Yeah, and she's sure hiding it. Curly got his work ahead of him. Bet she'd clear out for $20. Lenny still stared at the doorway where she had been. Gosh, she was purty, he smiled admiringly. George looked quickly down at him and then took him by an ear and shook him. Listen to me, you crazy bastard, he said fiercely. Don't you even take a look at that bitch. I don't care what she says and what she does. I seen him poison before, but I ain't never seen no piece of jailbait worse than her. You leave her be. Then he tried to disengage his ear. I never done nothing, George. No, you never, but when she was standing in the doorway showing her legs, you wasn't looking the other way, neither. I never meant no harm, George. Honest, I never. Well, you keep away from her, 'cause she's a rat trap if I ever seen one. You let Curly take the rap. He let himself in for it. Glove full of Vaseline, George said disgustedly. And I bet he's eating raw eggs and right into the patent medicine houses. That's basically George saying, I bet the dude is trying to take a bunch of experimental medicines because he's got STDs. So basically saying like she's sleeping with a bunch of different guys. Lenny cried out suddenly. I don't like this place, George. This ain't no good place. I want to get out of here. Okay, this is where we're going to stop part 3. This will probably contain 5 or 6 parts, this chapter, because it's a pretty long one. Right now, take a break, catch up on your power lines. I will put up the next parts tomorrow. In the meantime, think about this environment that they just wandered into, right? They are on a ranch. They don't know anybody, but already they've met one guy who likes to gossip, the old guy, and one guy who's for some reason trying to fight Lenny, and they don't know why, and Curly's wife, and Lenny's fascinated, and the boss was kind of mean. There's a lot going on that could impact the flow of this story and the conflicts that we encounter. So think about that. Catch up on your power lines. Make sure you're ready when I post parts 4, 5, and potentially 6. Bye.